The Health and Human Services and Aging Committee is now called to order. Chrissy, would you please call the roll?
Calling the roll, Mr. Jones.
Here.
Ms. Conwell.
Here.
Ms. Brown.
Here.
Mr. Schron.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Chrissy, has anyone signed in for public comment?
No, Mr. Chair, no one has signed in.
All right. Can we have a motion for the approval of our minutes from the April 1st, 2015 meeting?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Miller, seconded by Councilwoman Chantel Brown. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. The minutes are approved. All right, we have several items on our agenda today. And first is our East End Neighborhood Housing Association contract. And Chrissy, would you read this resolution into the record?
Resolution 2015-0074, a resolution authorizing an amendment to contract number CE 1400008501 with the East End Neighborhood House Association for Neighborhood Collaborative Services for the Family-to-Family Neighborhood System of Care Program for the period 5/1/2014 through 4/30/2015 to extend the time period to 3/31/2017 and for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $640,928, authorizing the county executive to execute the amendment and all other documents consistent with this resolution and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Hi. Is your microphone on?
Is it now? Okay. Daphne Kelker, Children and Family Services. This resolution is for East End Neighborhood House. We currently contract with 13 other neighborhood sites. East End, we're making an effort to put them on the same schedule, which they're on 3-year contracts, and it's all it says. We're adding the 640, and they'll be on the same cycle with our other neighborhoods.
So it's not a change in dollars?
No. It had they contracted at the same time period with the other 13, it would have been the same dollar amount. They're just a little behind, that's all.
Okay. So, any questions from the committee? Yes. Councilwoman?
And I didn't catch your name.
Daphne Kelker, Children and Family Services.
Through the chair to Ms. Kelker. Okay, this is the new contract moving forward.
Correct.
Okay, and what happened, because for East End, this is just in regards to East End. East End was out of, they only got extended for a year, and then
East End had some issues with the Inspector General, which were not unique to our business, and they asked that we not contract at that time. They had since resolved their issues. Also, in addition to this, before this contract, we've also completed, we have our internal monitoring process where we do a fiscal and program monitoring, and which was successful.
I'm familiar with the whole case. But so this is from 14, let me see, we're going from 15 to 17?
Correct.
So is this the extra 2 years that wasn't
Yes.
provided before? And then there's another caveat to that. I believe, and I could be wrong on the figure, 18,000 or something they lost out on the previous 1-year contract when it was, and so I'm just wondering how is that going to be resolved?
The contract, we weren't receiving services from them, so they weren't entitled to it.
I know, but there's so who would I reach out to discuss that matter? Because hearing from the director at East End, there still was an $18,000 gap in regards to that first year. And it's been a minute and I'm not updated.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that either, and I'm the contracting
So I
administrator,
wanna
but
make
I can
sure
look into it.
That's straightened out and going forward. So in saying that, would we hold this legislation to amend that additional money if it's found that it,
Based on county code, I mean, basically, if they're saying that they provided the services and we have not paid them for the services, I don't think that we can add this to it. We would owe it. But if they're just stating that the dollar amount of the contract was off, that's irrelevant.
okay.
So I don't know. I have to look
I'm
at.
not clear at this moment on the particulars. If I was upstairs on my email, I could refresh. But
And also, I mean, the contract may have been shorted what they're accustomed to, because based on the our advice from the Inspector General's office, the contract would not begin with the rest of them. So there was a delay in even establishing services with them because of the Inspector General's interaction. I'll look into it and I can get back with you. It's okay. I wasn't familiar.
So Councilman, I don't know if there's a rush on this particular item, but I would be inclined to hold it for a reading until I can get this matter straightened out.
Okay. You're gonna hold it. Okay.
Councilman Miller?
Mr. Chairman, am I correct that this contract now ends at the same date as the other group of contracts, so that in the future it could be reunited with the main group? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And if I see that the extension starts on 5/1.
Hopefully, that's the goal. Yes.
If this were not approved by 5/1, would that cause any interruption in service?
Absolutely.
So if we don't pass this out of committee today and pass it on second reading suspension next Tuesday, there could be a problem.
Quite possibly. Yes.
So we probably should think about that.
Yes, it is.
Councilwoman?
With this, to follow up with Councilman Miller, this contract brings you up to with the other 13, were there 13 others?
Correct.
Okay, and then just out of unfamiliarity, if you could share with me what type of issues we might experience if we did not renew by the 1st of May.
Each of the neighborhood sites are strategically placed within the community, so they would cause a delay in services in this particular community. And like I said, they're funded for the population in that area. So there could be a delay, mental health services, family visits. Yes. Mm-hmm. Counseling, yes.
Any further questions from the committee?
Is there anyone here from East End?
But you're not familiar at all with the issue of concern?
No, not the $18,000, are you?
Because they started a month late, but they didn't stop service.
Right. It's not for services that they provided and we owe.
And they have not brought it to your attention? So,
Right. Really, they can't. I mean, we pay when the contract is in effect. So they lost a month of being able to provide services. That's the most it could be.
And we did go back and give them a portion of those dollars, but.
Excuse me, can you come up to the mic, just to make sure we can get you on the record?
And I believe Dave Merriman is aware of this, so.
He is, Tammy Wagner, DCFS. So there was a delay in a month for them receiving the contract because of the IG's investigation. They disputed the investigation, but continued to provide services even without a contract. So after that was resolved, we went back and got them a portion of that monies that they had because they had a little left over from their previous contract. But they knew that this dollar amount was something that we couldn't resolve because they were not under contract at that time and were not supposed to be providing services. And we did. We raised it up to Merriman at that time as well as Executive Fitzgerald.
Okay, so that there's nothing that can be done. Is that something in the law or something in regards to that? Because I remember the whole thing a couple years ago.
I'm not going to say nothing can be done because, that's not up to just me.
And
but-
that's my whole point.
Yeah.
It's not the agency, it's the people that receive those services, the food, the meals, the things
Right.
of that nature that are being impacted because, if a center still wants to run, they're going to just utilize those dollars elsewhere. The case in point was, this is one of those things that something happens in your life and you're like, oh my God, how
Yeah.
did this happen to me? They were donated property, that wasn't theirs. They owed county taxes on it, but they didn't know. It all turned out okay through the IG's office.
Right.
So still we have this lag of $18,000.
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly go back and revisit the issue. They honestly haven't brought it up to us in over 11 months, so it hasn't been a reoccurring.
I'm getting the emails.
Thank you. But, you know, if we can even move forward on this piece, we can always go back and add those funds later in another amendment if that's something that we decide that we need to do.
Okay, so, and I'm okay with that, depending on what the chair would like to do. If you could give me your card after, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Out of demand to hold the contract, we certainly can discuss it, and if anything changes between now and the actual council meeting, we can address it then, but as of now, after discussion, we'll make our recommendations. Councilwoman.
Just a point of clarification. So if we potentially did take the suggested recommendation of Councilwoman Conwell, we could potentially run into the same problem again where services might be provided, but we don't have a contract in
We will
place?
stop services
Okay.
on the end of this month,
Okay.
which means those families in that community will not be provided any wraparound services or supportive services.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilman Miller?
Well, we will stop. Right.
I would just mention from experience at the Board of Control and Contracts and Purchasing Board that situations come up from time to time where we were not actually under contract, but where services actually were provided, and we've often paid for those services, just feeling that it's the right thing to do if services were actually provided. So I think we should look at the situation, and if we can document that services were actually provided, we should consider making an adjustment.
Okay.
Any further questions from the committee? If not, I'll make a recommendation that we do move this resolution to the full council under second reading suspension.
Thank you.
Moved and seconded by Councilwoman Brown. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Chrissy, if you read our next resolution.
Resolution 2015-0075, a resolution authorizing an amendment to contract number CE 1300126-0104 with Emerald Development and Economic Network for rapid rehousing services for the Emergency Solutions Grant Program for the period 10/1/2012 through 12/31/2015 for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $563,617, authorizing the county executive to execute the amendment and other documents consistent with this resolution, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
And Director Gillette, if you would like to speak to this item.
Good afternoon. I think there's a PowerPoint and that you have a handout about the program. So the Emergency Solutions Grant, also known as ESG, include activities that have been authorized through the HEARTH Act. The HEARTH Act renamed a grant that was called Emergency Shelter Grant, Emergency Solutions, to signal HUD's policy shift from looking to shelter as a response to homelessness to looking at homelessness as a housing crisis and utilizing other interventions. So there's essentially, three components to the Emergency Solutions Grant. The first is this concept of a coordinated intake. The second is diversion. And then the third is rapid exit or rapid rehousing. The coordinated intake and assessment, essentially, communities are being asked across the country to establish one front door to the homeless system. By doing that, by creating a single point of entry, the idea is that all the resources in the continuum will be utilized more effectively and more efficiently, and this is a real goal of HUD, that the resources that have been committed to address this problem are more appropriately used. In our community, we have a central intake, and in addition to being assessed and given a place to sleep that night, individuals and families are provided with a housing exit plan, which is intended to help them leave the shelter as quickly as possible. The second component is diversion. This is a concept that prior to emergency solutions wasn't really utilized within the continuum. And basically, it's an effort when someone is newly homeless to have a conversation with them about what other options they might have to coming into shelter. And in our community, this has been successful in diverting families and individuals collectively at about 30% of the time, which is, again, really important in utilizing resources more effectively, because this helps to divert people who aren't truly homeless. In other words, if there's a safe place in the community or for them to stay, they don't have to come into the shelter system and utilize those resources. The third component is this concept of rapid exit. And HUD is very focused on shortening the length of time that people remain homeless. And so communities are challenged to kind of change the mindset of the community around how long people are in shelter. And where shelters used to be thought of as places where people received programming and kind of, had to reach some thresholds before they went into housing, the thought process is now that, in fact, everyone is ready for housing. No one is ready to be homeless. And so the goal is to really focus on helping people move out of the shelter system. So, collectively, these strategies are intended, like I said, to try to match limited resources with the most appropriate client needs, and focused on ultimately trying to shorten the length of time that people are homeless. The Emergency Solutions Grant is all federal funds. This chart shows over the past several years, and then in 2015, the allocations to the different jurisdictions. So Cleveland receives an allocation of funding specific to Emergency Solutions Grant, the county, Department of Development, the state through the Department of Development Services, and then our county has also committed Health and Human Services levy dollars. All these funds are managed through the Office of Homeless Services among these activities to achieve the objectives of the Emergency Solutions Grant. So the next slide looks at how the funds are used through providers over the years, and then the red line is Eden, which is the subject of the contract amendment we're talking about today. And Eden is the agency that manages all the rapid rehousing funds. So essentially, what we have implemented here is what's called progressive engagement. And the idea is that as families come into shelter, that everyone is referred for a rapid rehousing assistance. Rapid rehousing is a security deposit and 4 months of rent, with the idea being that that's enough for people to get back on their feet and re-engage in the community. It's called progressive engagement because it starts out, everyone gets the same assistance. However, if a family is struggling at 4 months or 3 months, they could be approved for an additional 2 months or 3 months of assistance. So the idea is not to put people back in the community and then have them return to homelessness. The idea is to link them with resources in the community that will help them maintain their stability. So this chart kind of shows in 2013, and then the next chart in 2014, the number of households that were assisted and how the dollars were spent. It also looks at, this theory of progressive engagement that if we look at 2013, 82% of the families only needed 4 months of assistance to end their homelessness. And an additional 18% of the families received an additional amount of funding. Now, what we're also tracking is returns to shelter. And what we see in 2013 is that about 23% of the families did end up coming back to shelter. So going forward, what we're really focused on is trying to develop interventions that will reduce that percentage. In fact, we'd like to achieve a zero return to shelter rate. So Eden, as I said, manages the rent assistance. This contract amends an existing contract. It was awarded through an RFP process. 100% of the funding for this amendment is from the City of Cleveland's Emergency Solutions Grant, and then Cleveland subgrants the funds to the county to manage. For the funds, Eden accepts referrals for rapid rehousing from shelter providers. It assigns housing locators to the families to help them find units. It conducts the housing quality standards inspections. It explains the program to landlords. Eden also assigns community case managers to families once the family's housed. It issues security deposits and rent checks to the landlords, and meets regularly with the case managers to track client stability milestones. And then, last but not least, enters data into the HMIS system so that we can track outcomes and get an idea of how things are going. So Jen Fleiderer, who is with Eden Emerald Development, and who is in charge of the rapid rehousing program, is here today. And if you have any questions, either she or I would be very happy to answer them.
All right, any questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Miller?
Mr. Chairman, to Ms. Gillette, I saw that compared to 2013, that the ESG money was more than $1 million in 2013, and it was like 500 and some thousand in 2015. What is the source of these funds, and why was the allocation to Cleveland reduced by that amount?
Through the chair to Councilman Miller. So what you see here is HUD, Department of Housing and Urban Development, wanting to shift and increase funding into these activities. But the impact through the congressional budget process was that funding was reduced. Largely through sequestration, which across the board reduced every department's budget by 10%. So that's why we see these reductions in 2013 pretty dramatically. So things have gone up slightly, as you can see, but that's the reason why.
Second question is, looking at a broad level, what is your current assessment of your department's ability to provide an across-the-board continuum of services to the homeless population?
Through the chair to Councilman Miller. So this picture here is just Emergency Solutions Grant funding, and if you look at the entire continuum, there's about between 26 and 28 or 29 million dollars that's coming into the community.
Is that on an annual basis?
On an annual basis. And I'd be happy to have a longer conversation and explain those sources and how the money's being used. This issue of sequestration is significant, has had an enormous impact on not just our community, but other communities across the country to achieve the strategic objectives that have been set to reduce and end homelessness. At this point, our community is doing the best we can. There have been like more significant reductions in the overall continuum. So I don't know if that's, I don't know,
And do we believe that we have reduced the number of people who are chronically homeless in Greater Cleveland?
through the chair to Councilman Miller, yes. And again, I'd be happy to, I can send data to you. There's been a reduction in the percentage of chronically homeless at the point in time count of up to 73%, but overall by 40%. So we are continuing to work towards those goals and to create units for permanent supportive housing for chronically homeless. We are still pursuing those objectives and we're meeting them.
Okay, thank you.
Ruth, do you have a targeted number for reduction for entering the shelter system as a result of this contract?
So, to the chair, what we have through our county stat presentations, we've established baselines and then on a quarterly basis, see where we are relative to what our goals are. So one of those objectives where we look at the performance through the Emergency Solutions Grant is measuring the length of stay. How long are people staying in shelter, and is this sort of rapid rehousing initiative having an impact? And so what we did was establish a baseline and then try to see if we are able to shorten the length of stay by, I believe it's 10% per year. So we're looking at those metrics, and we have now. I can't say that we've been wildly successful. I think that we are making progress. We definitely are reducing the number of people that are entering the shelter system because of diversion. We can identify the number of newly homeless and then the number that actually enter the shelter, and we're able to measure and show that a percentage, about 30% a year, are being diverted. That's so that's a good, we can document that.
So when they're diverted, are they going to stay at a family member's home, or
Well,
where are they being diverted?
the most common reason that families come into shelter is that they come from a doubled up situation. So doubled up, they're sharing.
Doubled up.
You've never heard that? Okay. Like you're staying with your family.
Okay.
I don't know if there's another term for it.
Is that couch surfing? Is that what they?
What is it?
I've heard people say.
They're couch surfing? No, they're not couch surfing. It's more permanent than couch surfing because largely it's families. And, a young family may be staying with their mother or their aunt. And this is not uncommon throughout time, actually. So one of the abilities of the diversion team is to talk to someone and say, where did you stay last night? And, is it possible to go back to that situation, to possibly do some family mediation in order to effect a reconciliation? With the diversion funds, which largely come from the Health and Human Services dollars, a family can be provided a food card for Giant Eagle or Dave's, which may help smooth whatever the conflicts were. Oftentimes, another resolution for diversion is bus tickets. People come to Cleveland for jobs. They don't get a job. They end up being stuck here. They come to the shelter system, but by having that conversation, paying a $25 bus ticket to Detroit is a way to resolve that individual's homelessness. Now, we don't send people away without making sure that they have family or somewhere to go. Someone's going to meet the bus there. So,
You're not sending them. They're saying, I'm from Detroit, and
Right.
if I had a way to get back.
Right. Sometimes people come, they got a 3-day notice from their landlord and they think it's an eviction. So, sometimes it's putting together connecting someone with Cleveland Tenants Organization, so people understand that they don't have to leave their apartment, and then maybe connecting them with some other resources in the community.
Along with that, you mentioned utility assistance. Is this an issue where they're homeless because of a lack of utility services?
So that would be another diversion technique, because the diversion staff can, work with the individual to get some, solution through the utility company so that they don't have to leave their unit. So that would be, not that this system would and have cash to pay that, but that there are other resources in the community that do have, and that you can work with the utility companies to resolve those shut-offs.
Now, we contract with Cleveland Housing Network. They provide our utility assistance. So are you referring them to Cleveland Housing Network?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a rough number as to how many people are referred to that particular service?
From central intake, I don't, but I could try to find out and let you know.
Okay. Any further questions? Councilman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On your slide 7, you show that the ESG funding sources eroded by a considerable amount of money. It looks like during the course of the 3 years, it looks like it's kind of an erratic movement from the 2.5 million to 1.8, then back up to 2 million. What impact is this having on your ability to deliver the services if those funding sources are switching and swinging like that kind of volatility?
Through the chair to Councilman Schron, it's very challenging.
You'd be better off being flat than you would be. You'd be better off being at a flat number than you would be having this kind of erratic swings coming from, like the city of Cleveland looks like is where the biggest swing is coming.
Well, I'm kind of the cup is half full person. So, I would never look for a flat answer, thinking that, I think that the reason it's really challenging is that these funding streams come into the county at different times, and they have different grant periods, and we have, as you can see on the provider list, several providers, and so it's a challenge to try to keep everything moving with the money coming at different times, which is why we're amending at different times. As like the city of Cleveland money, for example, I wasn't able to add it to the contracts until January 1st. So anyway, it's just complicated, but Congress, could, the president has been supportive, very supportive of these programs in the Hearth Act, and so in his budget, he has significant funding, but then it goes into the congressional budget discussion, and we don't know what will come out. So I'm always hopeful. Now, the reality is that Congress has Republicans and Democrats. Our whole system has outcome data, and so the effectiveness of, for example, permanent supportive housing has been demonstrated. And so, when there's a discussion before the committees, they have recognized that these are effective programs, and so they have not been cut as much as some other programs. And so I take hope in that at some point, a budget will be passed and these programs will be supported at a higher level.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from the committee? I'm always trying to grasp this issue from the big picture. Are we truly addressing all of the needs of the homeless? Are anyone's needs going unmet? You mentioned earlier on the front door policy. To kind of bring it maybe to the ground level where I can kind of grasp this, if someone was to be homeless as a result of a fire, okay, where do they go now, and how would that change if with a front door policy?
To the chair, the Red Cross is our community's first response when a family or an individual is displaced as a result of fire. and they have resources, presumably someone in that situation has resources themselves, right? Because they were either paying rent or they were a homeowner. So the Red Cross has resources to both, put someone up for a short period of time, and I believe assist with first month's rent and security deposit if needed to help that person get into permanent housing. So we don't want to replace those kinds of resources in the community. I mean, that's kind of what the Red Cross is known for, that emergency assistance. Our community has made a commitment to provide emergency shelter to anyone who seeks shelter. So it is the safety net. Having said that, I think, again, the rapid rehousing resources, for example, we don't have enough of those resources to assist single individuals with rapid exit. We're focusing on families because of children and not wanting to have children in shelter, regardless of how nice the shelter might be. So we don't have enough resources to meet the needs of all the single individuals that are in the shelter system. So I don't know if that, but I'd be happy to do a presentation or send some information that looks at all the money that's coming in, how it's being allocated, and the numbers of people that are accessing those different resources, if that would be, if you'd like to have a presentation like that.
Okay. And we can talk we have Levine Ross.
Okay.
She helps coordinate our presentations.
Great.
Okay. Are there any further questions on this item? If not, I'll make a motion that we move this resolution to the full council, again under second reading suspension. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Second.
Under, I didn't hear you.
Second.
Under second reading suspension?
No, I was seconding your motion.
Seconded, all right. Moved and seconded by Councilman Shrine. All in favor say aye. 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 All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, all right, miscellaneous business. At this moment, we have a presentation from Help Me Grow. My first year in office, and I'm sure for many of us, we received the invitation from, sure every human service entity in the county. Fortunately, I was able to attend Help Me Grow, one of your legislator meetings, and I was very impressed with Help Me Grow, and certainly have been supportive of you since then. So I'm glad that you're here today, and we look forward to hearing you present.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. My name is Melissa Manis, and I'm the director of Help Me Grow of Cuyahoga County. I'm here today with Katie Utrata. She's our communications and outreach coordinator. Tom Wetzel, who's the coordinator of Bright Beginnings, our home visiting program for Cuyahoga County, and staff from Friendly Inn, which is our newest Bright Beginnings provider of services. I'd like to thank Councilwoman Yvonne Conwell for inviting us to be able to present to your committee today about the heart of Cuyahoga County, which is our children, our infants, our toddlers, and our really, really young children. We hope to provide you with an overview of Help Me Grow services that positively impact your youngest constituents, and would like to point out that all of the children that you see in the slide presentation are children from your districts and who are currently receiving the Bright Beginnings services. We're going to highlight Bright Beginnings. In 1986, there were amendments to the federal legislation of the Individuals with Disability Education Act that led to the establishment of early intervention services for children birth to 3, part of the special education law, but for babies, infants, and toddlers. The Ohio Department of Health was designated as the lead agency for Ohio for early intervention in 1988, and what was formed in our county was called the Cuyahoga County Early Intervention Local Collaborative Group. It was a long name. Fortunately, that was the group that would oversee early intervention services in Cuyahoga County locally. Since then, we've changed our name, which is great, to Help Me Grow, and now Help Me Grow includes three components: the early intervention piece, home visiting, and also infant hearing, and that's implemented locally in all 88 counties. Services under Help Me Grow are voluntary, and they're parenting support and child development services. They're provided at no cost to pregnant women and mothers and families with children up to age 3. Between June 2013 and July 2014, Help Me Grow of Cuyahoga County processed 6,503 referrals through our central coordination site. And approximately, that's about 12% of Ohio's early intervention referrals that year, in 1 year. Thanks to the continued support from the Cuyahoga County Council, from all of you, from Invest in Children, who we are one of the partners in, and Family and Children First Council, in Cuyahoga County, we are so fortunate to have a second home visiting program that we appropriately call Bright Beginnings. I'd like to show you now a 4-minute video that's new this year for us that highlights the 3 Help Me Grow programs and services in Cuyahoga County. We're using this video throughout the county to educate our partners like the Division of Child and Family Services, WIC, physicians, all 3 hospital systems in Cuyahoga County, to know about our services that are available to their families. So.
What's working?
Technology. It's working? Okay, great.
Before your little one even goes to school, the most critical time for learning happens. 80% of children's brains are developed by the time they're 3 years old. So what you do with your baby from birth to 3 matters most to his or her ability to learn in school. For over 20 years, Help Me Grow has provided families with information, support, and encouragement to help their children develop during the crucial early years of life. All Help Me Grow services are voluntary and at no cost to families. Services are provided in the home, although they can be provided at other locations that are convenient for the family, such as a local park or playground. Help Me Grow provides home visiting and early intervention services. Help Me Grow's home visiting programs serve expectant parents and children from birth until they start kindergarten. Home visitors from Help Me Grow are specialists in child development and are ready to share information about a variety of topics, including answering questions about things the child is doing or may not yet be doing, giving ideas for handling difficult situations, such as crying, hitting, or learning to use the potty, sharing health and development information from screenings, working toward achieving family goals, providing information on other community resources, and connecting parents with playgroups, learning activities, and community events. Help Me Grow early intervention serves children that may need a little more assistance in their development or may have medical or other complications. Children ages birth to 3 can receive an evaluation at no cost to the family, which will provide them with information on how their child is developing and help the family determine if and what services are needed. An early intervention team consisting of a service coordinator from Help Me Grow and therapists from the County Board of Developmental Disabilities work with eligible children and their families to help children achieve their optimal growth and development. The primary service provider will work with the family directly, and other team members will work behind the scenes to ensure the best possible outcome for the child. Help Me Grow is dedicated to providing services and supports to the children and families of Cuyahoga County to ensure that every child has the opportunity for a bright and promising future. If you or someone you know would like more information or to sign up for services, please give us a call and we will be there to help.
We thought that would just give you a little overview and see the babies in action, which I know most people enjoy seeing. Now, I would like to introduce Tom Wetzel, and he is the Bright Beginnings Coordinator who will share services about your program you help us provide in Cuyahoga County.
Good afternoon, Council. In recent years, the Ohio Department of Health has targeted 85% of the state home visiting slots to expectant mothers, first-time expectant mothers, and first-time expectant mothers with a baby under 6 months of age. Those families also must be at or below 200% of poverty to receive services. And for that reason, Bright Beginnings was developed to be able to serve families in Cuyahoga County who don't meet those stringent requirements. So for Bright Beginnings, we can serve the families prenatally all the way through kindergarten. Families just have to have one of those identified risk factors on the screen. And I would like to point out that the combination of being a single parent and low income is considered a risk factor. So while Help Me Grow is the lead agency for Bright Beginnings, the actual services are provided by 3 community organizations that are contracted: Ohio Guidestone, St. Martin de Porres Family Center, part of Catholic Charities, and as Melissa mentioned, Friendly Inn, who's our newest provider. They've started in July of 2014, and their staff is here today. Each agency also provides the state home visiting program, creating some efficiencies there. And the services are delivered throughout Cuyahoga County by 16 parent educators. The maximum program capacity at any given point in time for Bright Beginnings is 640 families, which is approximately 830 children. And I'd like to take this time to introduce Michelle Beauclair. She's our Help Me Grow supervisor at Friendly Inn, and she's going to share a story of one of our Bright Beginnings families.
Good afternoon. If I can introduce my Friendly Inn staff, if you guys would stand up. This is Lisa DeJesus, Ashley Miner, and Autumn Matthews. Autumn Matthews will be using her success story for today. I would like to share with you a family story that demonstrates how the Bright Beginnings program duly serves children and their caregivers. When Mother enrolled into Bright Beginnings, she had a 2-year-old son and she was pregnant with twins. Not able to afford stable housing, she and the father of her children were temporarily doubled up with his family. As a part of the Bright Beginnings model, Autumn, the parent educator, helped the parents break down their goals into manageable steps. Mom assisted Mom to prepare for the birth of her twins. She assisted Mom by obtaining baby clothing through the Harry Ratner Fund, as well as getting 2-pack in place through the Ohio Department of Health. This ensured that the babies had a safe place to sleep. Next, she encouraged Mom to apply for CMHA housing in order to stabilize her living situation. Within months, the family had their own apartment. Mom was working part-time at Donato's Pizza, and Dad was working nights. Dad continues to work nights, and the 2 take turns caring for their children while the other is at work. During a home visit, Autumn completed a developmental screening with Mom and her 2-year-old son. Problem solving was identified as an area to which focus on developmental activities. Mom's son enjoys the creative activities, Autumn shares with her family, which involve clay, chalk, Legos, and matching cars. He not only enjoys the one-on-one time he spends with his mom, but he is learning skills that will prepare him for school. Autumn also spent time talking to mom about the importance of breastfeeding, informing her of the unique nutrients found in breast milk, which supports brain development in children. After giving birth to her twins, mom did decide to breastfeed despite her hectic work schedule. Since enrolling in the Bright Beginnings program, mom has created new goals. She would like to enroll in a 2-year medical assistance program. However, she needs her GED. Autumn assisted mom, and actually she referred her to our agency, Friendly Inn, so she can enroll in GED classes. As these children continue to grow, Bright Beginnings will be there to ensure they are safe, happy, and learning through play. This is possible by supporting the family with their goals and efforts to provide a positive environment for their children. Thank you.
Thank you.
So as the story demonstrates, home visiting programs really increase the potential of 2 generations, the child and the parent. So we really work together as the family unit to support whatever needs to be done and to happen. We're there for them to help navigate the system because it's very complex. Bright Beginnings is Cuyahoga County's unique home visiting program for our youngest and most vulnerable children and their families in Cuyahoga County. And these success stories are made possible through your support. Our children are our future, and it's up to all of us to ensure that their future is bright. And thank you so much for your support in this very, very, very important essential program for our Cuyahoga County children. And we're happy to answer any of the questions that you may have. My colleagues can come up here.
Okay. Are there any questions from the committee? Councilwoman?
Yes.
Are there any age exceptions? I think I saw somewhere where prenatal, where they tend to develop a little bit slower. Is there any concessions for them after the age of 3?
After the age of 3, we actually, the early intervention program begins at birth. Well, it can prenatal if you identify a disability in utero, goes up to age 3. For the Bright Beginnings program, we actually, and this is the program that you guys fund, it goes up through kindergarten. So there's potential if a child is in early intervention and we see that there may be some other issues, but they're not eligible for special education in the schools because we take them through that process, they can actually participate in Bright Beginnings. And we really encourage families to stay with us if they enter Bright Beginnings to continue on through kindergarten. We can work together, even if they're in a quality early childhood setting. The research shows that if they also get home visiting, working with the parent, and also working, in childcare, the outcomes are much better.
Councilman Schrein?
You indicated that they might not be eligible if they had special needs pre-K, and I thought that was mandated, that they would receive special care, and I thought that they would be accompanied with a typical child at the same time.
For early intervention, that's birth to 3. It's under the same Individuals with Disability Education Act, IDEA, or IDEA. The eligibility for children birth to 3 is a little less stringent than when a child is, let's say a child is eligible for early intervention and they're getting therapies and services and whatever. When the child is beginning to turn 3, we actually start transitioning that child out of early intervention, and we go through a process. We inform the school districts where the child and family resides that here is a child that may be eligible for special ed preschool. And so they go through that multi-factored evaluation. They work closely with early intervention, with our service coordinator, and with the school district. And sometimes they're eligible, sometimes they're not. Really, the goal of early intervention is to hopefully get them to the point that they're not. But there are a lot of children that have, disabilities that will, like cerebral palsy, or it could be, whatever. It's very different in the education system because they look at it to see what are the factors that are going to get in the way of education. In early intervention, we really look at the development to see what can we do early on to get that child on track. But no, it's not just because they're in early intervention, what they call Part C early intervention. It does not necessarily mean if they're in early intervention that they will be eligible for special education or Part B in the school district.
Okay, what kind of track record do you have as far as of identifying the children from where you would identify them as being somebody that needs special needs, and then the handoff going into the school? I mean, that ought to be something we ought to be able to say, okay, we identified it and we have a 90% success, not 90, that wouldn't be the right word, but 90% acceptance within the school's system, so that there is a clean handoff, so that you don't have a gap in being developed.
For the children that we are serving, we actually, and that's a wonderful question, thank you. We have, the state monitors us all the time, and it's one of the compliance areas that we have to meet as 100%. And we do meet that at 100%, that every child that we're serving in early intervention, we make sure that they are transitioned either into special ed preschool, public preschool, whatever. So we look at that. It's one of the requirements, and we just got a notification that we were 100% in that area.
Oh, so every student, every child you have identified.
Every child that we have identified for us.
I guess I was hearing that you said some might not qualify.
Right, they may not, we take them through the process if they're with us, getting early intervention services through Help Me Grow. They may not qualify because of the restrictions to be eligible for special ed education, because it's different eligibility. For us, there has to be a delay in one area of development. In the school districts, it may be like two. They have a whole multi-factored evaluation. So I can't say if you're getting early intervention services in the birth to 3 system that you will also be eligible for the 3, for the special education for the schools. And really, that's the reason that early intervention was started, because we know if we identify a child that, let's say, for example, has a speech delay, if we get services in there as early as possible, that child may not need special education. It's going to save our community lots and lots of money.
Yeah, I guess I would then take it for the next, at the end of whatever you're at the end of your 3-year program, your 3rd year, and you've still identified that child as needing that service, and we'll use your speech,
Yes.
speech and hearing, which are fairly common areas where they do need that service. What has been your success of those children that are still that are 3 years old, still being identified as having a need, and then been accepted into the education side as saying, yes, we agree that you made the correct interpretation?
I would say that it's like 100%. That's what they look at. If that child still has a need for service and it's identified as a need for service through the school districts eligible for special education, they're there. Our goal is when a child needs that service, they have that individualized education plan in place by their 3rd birthday. So there's no gap by the time they leave our system and go to the school system.
Okay, well, I guess you've used, I guess, a couple times to say 100%. So could you just send us whatever the statistics and what schools you handed them off to and where they've been accepted? That'd be fantastic.
We actually do a report to the state. We can run it through our data system, and I can get that to you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the question.
So what you're really saying is there is a pipeline in place, and you're filling that section before someone goes into school, enters school, and you fill that segment.
When we talk about early education, it really starts at birth or even prenatally. And, it really does make a huge difference. 90% of the brain size and connections happen in the birth to 3 window of opportunity. And so we want to make sure if there is a child, and it is a continuum for us. That's why the home visiting piece is so important that you fund in Bright Beginnings, because many of those children, because you saw the risk factors, they're at very high risk for developmental delays. And so what we want to do, we do periodic developmental screenings to make sure that they're staying on track. And if they're not on track, we make a referral to the early intervention system, and right away we get them into service. And that's in partnership with the County Board of Developmental Disability. So every child gets a team of individuals that are experts. They have a service coordinator, an occupational therapist, a developmental specialist, a speech language pathologist, working together on a team. So, and speech language, did I say that? I always use the SLPOT, physical therapist I left off. But they have that opportunity because we want to make sure those kids, we get them early on, before they show up at preschool.
What is your budget annually?
And I brought that with me. Okay, from the Ohio Department of Health, we receive about $3.1 million. And that was for this state year 15. And through all of you, through Invest in Children, Office of Early Childhood, and Family and Children First Council, we receive about $1,447,000. So, and again, I just want to emphasize the Bright Beginnings program is unique for our county. And the reason it was created is because the state home visiting was so restrictive, we were turning away children with those risk factors. And so I just can't thank you enough for your support for our babies.
And how has that budget changed over the years? It sounds like it's decreased? Or?
It has decreased. And we just actually got the allocation from the state this year, and they cut us about almost, I don't know, let's see, about $200,000, $220,000, which is, a lot of children.
One last thing, in the county, we've always focused on having a no wrongdoer policy. And I won't say we just talk about it, but it's something that you constantly have to work at. One area I see is when we serve food, residents at the food pantry, someone will come in for hunger, but they have a multitude of other needs. And one thing I've started to see is institutions will come to the food pantries and share their particular human service. And I think it has a twofold effect. One, it provides and makes the clients there aware of the service, but it also makes those volunteers who are serving at the food pantry aware, and then they have an opportunity to become advocates. So I've seen them in action, and that if they're there and listening to someone speak, then they start to parrot to others. So I say it to say, have you done anything like that? Do you have an outreach where you make others aware of Help Me Grow, and particularly in the county food pantries?
Absolutely. In fact, Katie, who's with us today, Katie Utrata, is our communications and outreach. I mean, it's an ongoing job all the time to try to get the word out about our programs. And yes, we do presentations anywhere people will invite us. We, encourage from person to person communications, and the referrals. We look at the referrals. Where do we get referrals in our community, and try to be strategic because of funding limitations to make sure that we try to get every single corner of this county that we know that there's a need for our service. But through the food bank, we work closely we have a relationship with the food bank too, and even getting diapers for our families, because that's not covered by SNAP, and it's a big need. So we are constantly trying to get things like that for our families. And we do believe in no wrong door. I just call it every door is the right door.
Right.
I like the English better.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I'd like to recommend, if it's part of your strategy, some of the local food pantries in my district. So we'll
We
talk
will,
after that.
and we would appreciate any of the feedback, because Bright Beginnings is your program, so, we own it together.
And give me a number of how many individuals you serve annually with your $4.5 million budget.
Okay, for early intervention, it's around, we have 1,600 children with a active individualized family service plan, but probably around 2,000 children for early intervention, and then for Bright Beginnings, you would say at any point in time?
At any point in time, around 500, 550. In the course of a year, it might be more like 1,000 families, maybe up to 1,200.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Miller?
Mr. Chairman, my first question is, the participants in the visiting program, either from Help Me Grow or Bright Beginnings, on average, how many visits do they receive?
That's a good question, and it varies. We do have cases where there's only one visit, and we have cases that have been in the program for over 3 years. I would say generally maybe about half of the families stay in the program for at least a year. Would you say that's right, Michelle? Yeah.
And the second question is, if we take all of the families that are on low income, 200% of poverty or less, that's your guideline, isn't it? So let's take that group. Of that group, what percentage of the kids receive at least one visit?
Well, for Bright Beginnings, I can say 98% of all our families are at that income level. So, they're enrolled basically at their first visit, so that would be 100% of enrollees. We do tend to see a bit of a drop off in kind of that 1 to 3 visit. We are a voluntary program. But usually families that have gone, past their 3rd visit, they tend to stay in the program longer. Families that are considered high needs, which would have 2 or more of the risk factors you saw, our visit requirement is twice a month, versus families that might just have 1 risk factor, the requirement's only 1 visit a month.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think I successfully communicated my question, so I'm going to try again. My question is how large is the universe of all children that come from families with 200% or less of poverty? Let's say that there's 20,000 children in that category, and my question is, of that universe, what percentage of the families would participate in the program and their children receive at least 1 visit?
Well, I just want to respond historically. Several years ago, we had a program called Early Start. I don't know if you remember that. And it was a home visiting program. And I remember talking about that program because it was funded through the state and the county. It was for families 200% of poverty, and we served 4,000 children in that program in Cuyahoga County. This is a drop in the bucket. I mean, it's a huge bucket that we know that there are other home visiting programs like the state, but they're only serving around 600 children at any point in time at the state level. And then we have our Bright Beginnings number. There's Moms First, and they're serving, a couple thousand of children too. So it's really a drop in the bucket. We could serve many, many more children and their families.
So, what determines which children?
Right. We get referrals primarily from the Department of Child and Family Services. We get them from WIC. We get them from the hospitals. And it's really the referrals. And really one of the best referral sources we get are from our agencies themselves. Like Friendly End is phenomenal about getting families that live in the area where Friendly End Settlement House is located. But again, this is a voluntary program. We cannot serve the families without them agreeing to be there or to accept our services. We're in their homes. And so that makes it challenging.
of the families with children that are really high risk, do you think you see most of them?
I do not. I do not. I said it's like a drop in the bucket. We do get lots and lots of referrals, again, from DCFS, and they see that our number, because we're housed at Quincy Place, and they see our number is Cuyahoga County, and sometimes they don't answer the phone, or they'll say yes, and I'm sure our parent educators can agree that once they find out, even if we get in the door, they find out it's a voluntary program, they will not continue with us because they don't want someone in their home. We want to build the relationship. The parent educators are phenomenal folks, and to build that relationship, we want them to keep their families, their children. So it's challenging. Excuse me.
Well, Mr. Chairman, my hope is that every child would get visited. But I would be less concerned about the families that don't want to be visited, even though they probably need to be. But you can't make people do stuff, and you know. But it should be our goal to try to visit every family that's willing to be visited. It just can head off so much stuff down the line, and so.
And we appreciate that because we feel that way too. I know it's that story about the starfish. I know you've all heard that. There are millions of starfish on the beach, and he throws one back in, and it makes a difference for that child. And I think all of us that are in social services and care for kids, you know, we know there are hundreds out there, but we know we try to make a difference with the ones we can, and that's what we're here about.
And I would like to say it's not a one-time shot. We often get the same families referred to us multiple times. The very high-needs families, as you can imagine, are in multiple systems. And we do have quite a number of families who drop out and come back later. So sometimes the third time's the charm.
Mm-hmm. We're persistent.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just going to make one very broad level comment. It's that I think we see an awful lot of this. We see it with Help Me Grow and Bright Beginnings. We see it with closing the achievement gap. We see it with youth development programs. We see it with after-school programs. We see it with workforce development. We have a lot of really good programs out there, but it's all a patchwork that's serving only a fraction of the people who really need these programs, and I think we really need to give some thought to how do we take these things to scale, and how do we make these programs available at least to those people that are really interested in receiving the benefits of these programs. And I think that's a huge challenge.
Yes. Councilwoman Conwell?
Through the chair, do you inform families about the high mortality rate in the county and the things associated with it and how to prevent it?
Absolutely. We are one of we're part of that whole Back to Sleep campaign, Safe Sleep. We give information to families, and we emphasize that. We do a safety check in the house to work with the family to say, you know, this is looking to see where the child sleeps or doesn't sleep, and we share that information, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Councilwoman Brown?
Through the chair, to follow up again with Councilman Miller, you kind of touched on the fact that it's a voluntary program. You get referrals from the hospital and different agencies. And my question is, do you have an obligation, let's say a house that is not maybe up to par, like, you know what I'm getting at? Like, do the people have the fear of being their children being taken away or placed out of the home because of their living conditions with you coming into their homes? Is there something to circumvent that?
Well, I think sometimes that could be, and we really try to get across to the families that we're not there for that. We want to help them be linked to resources to make their home safe or whatever. I know I've talked to lots of parents and they go, well, I really don't want somebody to see my house. I'm embarrassed or I'm ashamed or whatever. And we just say, we can meet elsewhere. We don't have to meet in your home. We really want to build that relationship to show that that's not what it's about. We want you to be the best parent caregiver ever for your child and to ensure your child is linked to whatever services they need. But I do think that fear is there. Like I said, we get a lot of referrals from DCFS. And so with that, they've already got that mindset that, oh, here's the county again. We don't want anybody in our business. So we're really trying to get beyond that and say, no, we're here to be your partner. If you're in an unsafe living condition, that's one of the risk factors. We want to help you get a safe living condition. What can we do? Working with Ruth's group, making sure they have stable housing, because we also have a lot of those kind of issues. But you're absolutely right. I think a lot of people get those preconceived ideas, and we really try to get in and build that relationship and become their partner. But again, on the other hand, we are mandated reporters. So if we see something going on that's unsafe for that child and puts them into a situation that's not appropriate, we will make a referral to DCFS.
To that point, I good to acknowledge our friendly Inn partners here who are part of my district as well. So I'm glad to see them here. Our family-to-family collaborations really help fill that role, whereas the county is that entity that can remove a child. So it's like seeing the police in your rearview mirror. You may not be doing anything, but you get nervous when you see the police behind you. So the family-to-family collabs, they really help strengthen those families, and they do great work. Because as you saw, we just had a contract with East End Neighborhood House for doing that exact work. So those partnerships are critical for the residents who trust those entities, who trust the small businesses and those entities, the churches that are in their community, that they recognize, that they know, to actually provide the service that we, with authority to take, want to deliver. So they create that buffer.
Absolutely. And the parent educators are the heroes of Help Me Grow. They're the ones out there building the relationship for all of us. Thank you for those comments.
Are there any further comments from the committee? If not, we thank you, Director Manos, and thank you for coming out, and we will be talking with you soon.
Thank you so very much. We appreciate it.
Another plug for Friendly Inn, I believe you have a Women's Health Expo today. Is that correct? So we want to get that. What time is it? 4 to 8. It's from 4 to 8 this evening. So those listening, come on out. I may not make everything, but at least I have you on the brain there. Okay? All right. Thank you for coming out. And if nothing else holds our attention, I believe we have someone who signed in for public comment. And is the name Lou?
Miss Lou.
Ms. Lou, yes.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address issues to all the council people now. Last time I came here, and this time I'm glad we have heard lots of good programming in the community. But unfortunately, as your question also shows, certain programmings, even we have a good intention to have them, but sometimes the way they carry out or the programming design itself may have a little bit drawback. For example, for the homeless people, Central Intake is a very good program to utilize the community resources. But unfortunately for homeless people, when they are facing homelessness, very depressive and terrible issue, they don't understand why they have to be diverted. That's why some people may kind of resist, or if the plan doesn't work out, they may have to come back to the system again. That's why during the time you are trying to figure out certain problems in your life in order to solve the homeless problem and some other issues, we do have a good entity called emergency shelters to keep you away from the outside elements. But during this time, unfortunately, due to human errors or some other things you cannot expect with your mind, preoccupied mind, certain things may happen. It becomes inside elements. You have to struggle, sometimes no less than the outside elements. One of the community partner helping homeless issues is called NEOC, Northeastern Ohio Coalition for Homeless. They have been helping to collect some grievances from a particular situation. These are the grievances collected from the residents staying in this particular homeless shelter. And this will actually show we have unexpected factors which cause lots of inside elements to really stopping people to achieve their goals, to either be out of homelessness or to solve other issues which may be caused from their mental health issues or domestic violence or any other situations they have to face day by day. So I wish all the council people here, if you are also the board member for Adams Board, which you will attend the meeting later, then please go there, and there are issues more than whatever we have heard here. Thank you very much. By the way, this particular envelope is for the client's right officer at Adams Board.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Has anyone else signed in for public comment?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right, well, if nothing else holds our attention, this meeting is adjourned.